Hi guys, welcome to the penultimate episode of this series of classes versus races in D&D. If you've got any ideas for what I should do next, please put them in the comment below. I'm always interested because, frankly, I just tend to do random stuff that comes into my head. Doesn't necessarily mean anyone wants to watch it. But in this video, we're dealing with Half Orcs and how they interact with other classes. In 5th ed, Half Orcs still remain pretty much the same as they have in all previous eds, which is the short-lived barbarian class. Although for some reason they've got really pointy ears now. I'm not sure they ever had pointy ears before. They've slightly edited the background of Half Orcs in 5th ed, in that they made it so that orcs will seek out willing humans, and some humans will even seek out willing orcs, etc., etc. Previously, orcs used to raid villages and then leave behind pregnant women, which was dodgy as fuck. I think they've kind of realised how iffy that was and retconned it for 5th ed, which is nice. I don't know if they retconned it for 4th ed. I never read 4th ed because everybody whose opinion I relied on said it was awful. But the Half Orcs remain a fairly standard bulwark for people who want to play barbarians and fighters. They're big, they're strong, they're scary, they're stereotypically aggressive. Half Orcs are somewhere between 5 and 7 feet tall, weigh anywhere between 180 and 250 pounds, and are covered in scars and vicious. They've got a one-eyed god, Grumpsh, who is the orc god. So straight away, they've given you a background hook for clerics and warriors. You've got the tribes and slums section here, which explains that Half Orcs often live amongst orcs, and of the other races, humans are the most likely to accept them. And the orcs tend to get by on their physical prowess, so it really gives you a lot of background hooks straight in the racial description. Ability-wise, your strength is increased by 2 and your constitution by 1. So we can straight away see that all your combat races are going to benefit from the Half-Orc racial bonuses. Your alignment tends towards chaos, but that's not built in, and alignment versus class is no longer as important as it used to be. There aren't any classes that are locked into alignments anymore like the Paladin class used to be. Size remains medium. You've got dark vision up to 60 feet. You gain proficiency with the intimidation skill. Relentless endurance. When you're reduced to 0 hit points but not killed, you can drop to 1 hit point instead. You can't use this feature again until you finish a long rest. For something like a barbarian where you're a tank, or a fighter where you're exposing yourself and are incredibly vulnerable, this does give you the ability to just go in there and hammer. You could also use this for any type of wizard that's based on close melee, relying on the fact that you can take a ton of hits, get up, do your thing, and then maybe run away. There are some options with that. Savage attacks. When you score a critical hit, you can roll one of the weapon's damage dice 1 additional time. Again, we can straight away see how this lends this to fighters, how this lends itself to barbarians, and the other physical classes here. So again, we'll start with the barbarian. There's a lot of damage stacking abilities with barbarians, which will then stack with the Half Orc critical hit. The +2 strength bonus instantly is going to work with barbarian. The +1 con bonus instantly is going to work barbarian. The ability to get back after you've been reduced down to 0, not so much. Barbarians don't do the thing anymore where they drop down points after they've raged and so are really low. However, they do resist a lot of damage. So with that ability, unless you're killed outright, you can go in with a barbarian safe in the knowledge that even if you get down to 0 hit points, you're probably going to have a chance to withdraw, chug some healing potions, and maybe fight your way out, or get healed up and run away, whatever you're going to do. So that instantly we can see that works quite well. Bard, kind of playing against type. Half Orcs aren't considered particularly charismatic. There's nothing that lends itself to Bard here, but again, there's no reason why you can't. I can quite imagine a Half Orc skald, telling the stories of his people and going on and recalling a great verbal history of his tribe. That's totally in there. I'm not sure if we have skald yet, but certainly an Orc Bard hybrid isn't beyond possibility. Clerics, we've already been given Grumsh. The +1 Constitution and the +2 Strength can work very well for what's known as a Battle Tank Cleric. For those of you unfamiliar with the Battle Tank Cleric, that's a cleric that specialises in buffing himself, either making himself harder to damage or allowing himself to do more damage. You're going to have to make sure that the Orc's wisdom is reasonably high, but again, that kind of cleric in there could work. Plus, as I said earlier, you've got Grumsh. That instantly gives you a Deatic hook to work with. Druids, they do hang around in tribes. They do hang around in the wilderness. So the idea of a druid isn't 100% away, but orcs are generally considered to be the ravaging hordes and not that respectful of nature. So you could do it, but again, it's going to be more playing against type than with type. Where are we? Come here, you. Druid circles. Get. Fighter. The extra critical. The ability to get back up after you've been taken down and chucked down potions. The extra strength and the extra constitution. Literally, the Half Orcs are built to be fighters. Any of the combat classes they'll fit in. So a Half Orc is going to work perfectly well as a fighter. There is no problem doing that at all. As a matter of fact, he'll probably excel as a fighter. They might struggle a bit with the Eldritch Knight. Again, not particularly Eldritch, but they're going to be so good at every other thing they don't really need to. Monks, I've seen plenty of Orc monks. You're another hard-hitting race. It's another hard-hitting class rather. So the extra strength is going to help. They don't wear armor, so the extra constitution is going to help. The extra crit dice can help. And again, getting back up is going to help. Background-wise, there are several types of monks who some will devote themselves to peace, others to chaos. A half-orc fighting against his animal nature is actually a fairly common trope in D&D. So I can see that working completely. Paladin, again, there's nothing that lends itself to Paladin, but they're a fighting class. Literally, we've got a nice picture of an Orc Paladin there. There's nothing that lends itself to the magic side of Paladin, but again, there's nothing that stops you. And when it comes to the physical combat side, again, Orcs are written for combat. The strength, the endurance, and all those other things are just going to fit right in with Paladin. Rangers. Background-wise, orcs are pretty much built to be rangers. They live in the wilderness. They fight. They kill. They hunt. Sorry, I was going to say they hunt and they track, and I ended up reversing it there. They hunt and they track. So they work very well for rangers. Again, their ability to drop and get back up, and their dark vision mean that if they're foraging ahead of the group, they've got a reasonably good chance, added with their extra constitution buff, of surviving a solo encounter to get back to the group. So that's all there, and a lot of this stuff will work with. A lot of the stuff from Rangers will work with Half Orcs, the favoured enemy, two-hand fighting, and the like. A Half Orc dual-wielding axes like a Barbarian or a Ranger is going to be a nasty foe to take. The Beastmaster, the Hunter archetype works perfectly. The Beastmaster archetype, there's always Beastmasters wielding some sort of vicious hound whenever we see an Orcish army. So that's right in their background-wise. They make quite good Rangers. So yeah, they're really good with that. Rogues. Rogues is a bit more interesting. They're big, they're thuggish. Nothing they have really lends itself towards roguishness. You can, again, as always, play against type. However, there is such a thing as the intimidation rogue, the thug rogue. The criminal that shakes people down, that beats people up for money. So that works very well. There's no actual archetype for that. They've got you've obviously got your thief, assassin, arcane trickster. But there's nothing stopping you being part of the criminal underworld and being the big, having your character having been the big guy that stood behind the boss, or the doorman, or something like that, who's connected to the criminal underworld and therefore is a rogue. The assassin archetype, if we move away from our black-clad drow assassin, there is totally such a thing as the hitman, a much less subtle, much less cold and calculating assassin, but rather somebody that the big gang boss sends around just to kill people loudly and publicly. And a Half Orc will fit perfectly into that. That's going to cause you very few problems. And that'll work both in the background and you're turning into a kind of fighty creature. So that works for the orc. There's always the ability to play a low-down dirty fighter. But yeah, there's a lot of ways you can play a roguish orc, and there's nothing stopping you. As I say, with 5th Ed, there are no negative traits, as you saw in 3.5. So there's plenty of things to make certain archetypes better and certain classes better, but very little to make them worse. Sorcerers, same old, same old. You might be a bit more of a physically capable and survivable sorcerer, so that works quite well. Having draconic origins is quite cool, but doesn't lend itself particularly well to orcs in terms of abilities. Neither does wild magic. Again, quite cool. Doesn't sell in terms of ability. Doesn't lend itself to orcishness. In terms of background, they both do. Whenever we see a black or red dragon, it's usually orcs that its big boss is the idea that a dragon has bred the orc to produce a tougher boss or a tougher underling. Perfectly acceptable. The idea that orcs are blessed or cursed by fate to have wild magic, the idea of a wild magic shamanic creature, again, that works both with the sorceress archetype and with the cleric archetype, or even the druidic archetype, depending on how you want to play that kind of shamanic creature. So that's there. Warlocks work well with orcs. They're more than capable of making deals with dark and foul entities for power. In fact, that's pretty much the raison d'etre of most orc witches, wizards and shamans that you come across, that they serve some dark god or being somewhere. Again, nothing lends itself particularly to being a warlock, but nothing prevents you being a warlock. And once you kind of got the initial, covered the initial bases, you can make a perfectly good warlock with that extra thump in combat if you need it. That moves us to finally wizards, and again, there's nothing that lends itself to being a wizard, but there's nothing that prevents you being a wizard. The kind of shamanic witch doctor orc that uses uses weird and exotic plants or weird and ancient incantations and animalistic rites rather than knowledge. Again, all that works for a wizard, just as as a background, just as a background thing, just as well as it works for a cleric or any other magic user. Obviously, when you think of that kind of thing, you think of druids. But again, when you think of druids, you tend to think of one with nature, which is hardly the orc way. Well, which is not entirely the orc way. Yeah, this one was a quick one, I think, primarily because orcs are fairly solid and fairly straightforward in what they were designed to be. The half-orc class has always been the combat monster, and so it lends itself to combat classes and not much else. It does, again, as I said, there's no negatives to taking anything other than combat. It's just the orc positives line up with the positive traits of combat classes much more effective than they do anything else. Background-wise, because half-orcs can be raised in tribes, you can really use it to play a full orc archetype if you haven't got access to any books which give you full orc stuff. Because they're not orcs and can be born of human mothers, playing the outcast, playing the kind of considering yourself hideous and considering yourself more of an animal than a human, trying to prove you're civilized or your human side, again allows you to be, allows you to play in human backgrounds and from a human origin and play against type or even for type if you've been raised amongst humans all your life and you're just finally embracing the beast. So I mean, orcs background wise are one of the most flexible, similar to Dragonborn in that whilst orcs have a society, half orcs kind of do. They get accepted quite reasonably by orcs who often seek them out because half orcs are smarter than orcs. And they can get accepted by humans who often seek them out because they're stronger than humans. But they're not a race in and of themselves. And as with most of the half races, it does leave them very free to write their own history and forge their own destiny, which is really quite cool, I think. I think half orcs has been one of my favourite races for a while. Their shortened lifespan does limit you background-wise. You've got to think an orc's only going to live less than a human, and is going to, if it's going to be a more physical thing, it's going to suffer the ravages of age faster than a human. By the time you get to 50, 60, you're starting to slow down, and as any fighter will tell you, there's the quick and the dead when it comes to fighters. So when playing Law, you've got to consider just how much time he's had on your world to actually develop these skills and learn these things in terms of how much detail and how many different things he's going to put in his background. That being said, 60 years was the life expectancy of human beings not that long ago. And they still managed to fit a hell of a lot of stuff in their lives. So it doesn't constrain you too much. Hope you guys found that enjoyable, and I'll see you next time. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, remember to like and subscribe to my channel. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. Not sure why, but I am. So if you like it, see me there, and please tell your friends. Thanks very much. Bye.